Well, it looks like we have some very interesting OTK bits and pieces happening in the other world. Well, I'll be if it isn't Pentastag. Make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more Oz content. If your linked monster attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage to your opponent. Well, that's just simple enough, right? There surely isn't going to be an OTK like Ultimate Oh god, it's Medicurious, isn't it? With the Ars Magna stuff, you basically just slap Medicurious into the main monster zone, have the arrows point down, and then just have him pointing to a Pentastag that just now can inflict battle damage to your opponent as you've basically, turned him into an 8,800 attack point monster as you're just spinning right round on your opponent's monsters. Yeah, that's the world we live in now, honestly. Give it to Elf Note to figure out that you can actually any of these decks that, you got the Malice Ars Magna list, we've already seen a couple of other cheeky Ars Magna piles kind of popping up, but give it to any deck that could make Medicurious, get the Ars Magnas associated to it, and get the Pentastag underneath pointing to the Medicurious to give you that massive OTK factor to kind of clean up things right now. That is exactly what Pentastag is there to do. Now, this is just a symptom of where the meta has gone. We've seen OTK bits and pieces in the past kind of really starting to show their head in different directions. But I think Pentastag being the, generically take this and then, be able to clear up the opponent's field while smashing through their monsters in probably the most ignorant fashion that you can is a very Yu-Gi-Oh thing to do. So, hey man, if your deck just wants to support a Pentastag tossing into the deck, giving you access to possibly work with some different things, then, albeit I'm willing to give it an actual try here. Which brings us to Reprodocus. I'm just going to straight up say it. I think Reprodocus should be banned. I don't think there is a world where Reprodocus has any grounds to stick around in the OCG format. This card is just, first of all, it's just two monsters. So the fact that you can generically make this without having to slap two effect monsters into it already kind of gives me a bad taste in my mouth. But the thing with this thing is you can declare an attribute, face up monsters this card points to become that type until the end of the turn. Or we can declare an attribute and all face up monsters that this card points to become that attribute until the end of the turn. Classically, this was able to basically just turn, you could basically use Haman in the hand, make a copy of Reprodocus, and then turn that thing into, a Thunder monster. Whoops, just go ahead and get a free Colossus on another thing. There's also a really weird world where, you change a Fiend monster to a Light. Hey, full Fiendsmith combo gets a chance to resolve around this. We've already been seeing this card pop up in places that I don't really want to be seeing this card popping up. And I feel like Reprodocus was one of those cards that when they designed it, they didn't really expect future application to go too crazy with it. But cards like Reprodocus that change attributes, change typing, that were deemed basically two extra monsters to make it in a format where you're just tossing extra monsters out as stepping stones, when we're especially coming down to these end board combos, Reprodocus was bound to become, one of those big cornerstones. And I think this card's playing a pretty big part in some of the bits and pieces of the modern era Japanese format. Just because, especially when we look at things that the Sacred Beast deck has been doing as well, which brings us to, my next talking point here. Good old Archlord Kristya. So if you've been paying attention to the OCG, trust me, I'm doing it for you with these videos. Archlord Kristya has had a little bit of an uptick recently. Now, why in the world is Archlord Kristya suddenly now being talked about in, hindsight? Well, I think this is one of the funniest things I've seen. Archlord Kristya is part of the infamous 4-card extra deck shenanigans. The Code Talker, the Firewall Dragon, the Quartet in Bloom, and the Zena twins of just shit on the floor, I make Dookie, and now you have to deal with Archlord Kristya coming back on the Quartet in Bloom. The fact that we are seeing Sacred Beast rising up in the OCG ranks right now because they get access into Archlord Kristya as an end-board piece is hilarious. But this is just surely a Thunder Dragon Colossus plus an Archlord Kristya plus whatever else the Sacred Beast player's putting on that infield. Surely that's not going to be enough to officially end the duel. Well, the fact that this deck has now gone up into basically B tier at this point is kind of a problem, honestly. And I can't believe I'm actually going to say that right now, because see, when a deck like Sacred Beast, that was just kind of like a subpar combo variant, kind of starts to rise back up slightly in terms of combo ability, I can't help but feel that, you know, the generic extra deck tools that we've kind of got creeping around in the modern format, I can't help but feel like we're failing to analyze these problems and to understand, you know, why these cards are being absolutely as broken as they actually are, because that's the case right now. These cards are breaking the game with themes that they shouldn't be breaking them with. Which I guess, hi Toon Briefcase, how are you? Why are you on the block today? Surely nobody's playing Toon Briefcase. Well, Toon Terror still continues to see main deck play. All right, you've also got to remember, while the Rizal variant of this deck has been seeing a decent amount of play, there's also like we're going to play the double Hydra Drive Dragon and go a little bit more to the floor with the Toon combo lines and just try to produce like decently expendable boards, which means that we can actually kind of build in some other funny Toon cards that we can actually access along the way. Toon Briefcase becomes one of those little end board pieces post side decking that we can actually access to be able to use. Now, Toon Briefcase says, hey, whenever your opponent summons a monster, while you have a Toon monster, and that's the thing that sucks, right? Like, you're probably going to be ending on like Evil Box with the Toon Terror, depending on where else you're going. It's not if you have a Toon World. It's just as long as you have a Toon Monster, which, good news, if your opponent does out the field spell, you know, the Briefcase is still technically live, which I don't actually hate that. There are advantages to playing the Briefcase in the deck, you know, versus things. But if your combo ends up just eradicating all of your Toon monsters off of the field, then, you know, the Briefcase just ends up being a dead end board piece at the end. So that kind of sucks in hindsight. But it is also another piece for you to kind of interact with Evil Box, depending on, you know, if you hard draw the Toon Terror or not. The question just becomes, you know, do I need to build this into the main deck? Is this resource worth actually playing? And if we are actually choosing to play this, you know, is it truly worth it on the end board side of things just to be able to have it? So that's my 2 cents with this card. I don't hate having Toon Briefcase be an option again. Actually, I quite welcome seeing the Briefcase be here, because it's a very nice change of pace just to kind of see him doing his job. And then Dominus Purge has just been going everywhere. Ever since they released the Dominatrix chick, where you're basically able to, you know, rotate in to, you know, Purge, decks are playing it as a 1, 2, I feel like they're not playing it as a 3 of. And they've been playing less Purges, honestly. I think the ratio now is 1 of the Searcher for the Dominus Purge, and most builds are trying to get away with playing 2 Dominus Purges. It's the same thing as playing 3 Dominus Purge, honestly, at the point, because, you know, you're able to filter for the gosh darn thing, which is honestly pretty good. Now, this becomes a different story depending on how the build itself kind of structures up, right? You know, if you're looking to go to more of an extreme with things, then obviously, you know, you're going to play Songs of the Dominators. You know, you're going to really try to expand out the package, and you're going to go all the way with all of these different bits and pieces. Sure, that's fine. But for the current design space of what we've been given, Dominus Purge in decks that can support Dominus Purge, Blue Eyes, Cool Toon, you know, all of these different variants, they're doing wonderful with this. And I think it's really, really interesting just to kind of see, you know, how we have gotten to this point and how Konami has revolutionized the modern usage of Dominus Purge. So I guess good job to that. That's actually really, really cool. So what do you guys kind of think about everything here? Little bits and pieces that I wanted to talk about because I think they are important to look at. But please, you know, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think, and I'll see your beautiful faces back here in day, guys. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.